International Chamber of Commerce Sri Lanka is the national office of the Paris-based business organization. The ICC comprises of membership of 45 million members in 130 countries. Trade facilitation, export and import and cross-border trade and issues relating to freight forwarding and many other matters of importance are addressed by the ICC. ICC Sri Lanka works through several committees to debate, discuss, and suggest solutions on subjects related to the mandate of the Chamber. Each of these commissions are led by professionals in the committee, with many committees functioning. ICC includes a Membership Committee, International Relations Committee, Policy and Advocacy Committee, Training and Development Committee, Banking Committee. ICC is the sole authorized guaranteeing agency for ATIA. It's an internationally accepted customs document which enables duty-free and tax-free temporary importation of items as commercial samples. The ATIA reduces costs and red tape. The ICC is also known for its popular publications, invaluable for bankers, lawyers, arbitrators and anyone involved in cross-border trade. Its members are provided with a member's privilege card which includes discounts with multiple retailers. ICC Sri Lanka's vision is to be the organization of choice to advance international trade and investment for businesses in Sri Lanka. ICC Sri Lanka's mission is to be the change agent in national policy formulation and implementation and facilitator of global businesses with Sri Lanka and disseminator of information on the development of business utilizing the services of ICC Paris while continuing to be a facilitator of dispute resolution. In addition, the ICC Sri Lanka organizes seminars, lectures, meetings with business leaders, and gives recognition to Sri Lankan businesses for achievements. ICC can play a special role in connecting business to the world and be a driving force for all Sri Lankan businesses.
We still have issues. We know there are businesses whose debts are really overwhelming. Even the banking system cannot take it. Some has to be phased off, some have to be rebuilt. We still haven't reached that painful part of the exercise. Nevertheless, the government's aim is to revive and to help as many businesses as possible. And our focus then goes on to the small and medium enterprises who find it difficult. But without the small and medium enterprises, no one can survive. So we are going through a whole series of exercises in correcting the economy, all because we did not act on time. Then where do we go from here? Are you going back to the same economy? Are you going back to corporations that are dependent on public funds? I was looking at how much the main corporations have borrowed from the treasury and from the banks. And I thought, what if we didn't give this money to them? We took that whole lot of money and we distributed to our industries. You all could have modernized. We could have given you very soft loans to modernize your machinery. Giving 100 billion, 50 to 100 billion rupees a year wouldn't have been difficult if we didn't have these losses. Which are helped. That's the way for 10 years we couldn't. For 10 years we couldn't. We didn't do it. We didn't. For the next part, the next part talking now. You see from next year. Start making our enterprises competitive. We have no other way. We have to earn foreign exchange. We have to get foreign currency. If Singapore can do it, if Dubai can do it, why can't we? We have to gradually prepare ourselves for it. One of the famous items are PARATE, on which some of us seem to be having different views.
To address the challenges faced by SMEs under the current PARATE law, a more specialized financial structure and financial engineering seems to be called for, is necessary. And in the final analysis, given the role of tourism and SMEs in Sri Lanka, the government needs to reach out to support them while also protecting the interests of the banking sector. So it's a difficult balancing line. We have our keynote speaker in the governor of the central bank, and it's toward him that we now look to deliver the keynote. So here's the governor of the central bank, and we do appreciate that he's just arrived from Mumbai and at his office. So we appreciate that you have been able to do that on time and join our webinar. Over to Dr. Andala. Doctor, you need to unmute. You are at the moment muted. Microphone still off. Right, now that should be all right.
Thank you. First of all, thank you very much, Arun, for this introduction, and also ICCI for organizing this important timely seminar. One clarification based on what Arun at the introduction remarks make. I want to make a clear distinction between SMEs and anti-parate activists. So that's very important because we are pretty much engaging with SMEs. Obviously, SMEs need to be supported, should be supported. We continue to support SMEs. We are having the central banks, government are having a lot of measures are taking to support SMEs to face this very difficult economic crisis that we had to face last year. So anti-parate activists are different from SMEs to me. There's a distinction. SME, as first question for the theme, can suspending parate rise help SME recovery? Clearly, no. So why I should say no? Because that will not support SMEs. That will support anti-parate activists. So what is the difference between these two? Anti-parate activists are ones who have already borrowed money from out of depositors from the banks. They have already borrowed, but they find it not being able to service those obligations, and either intend to default those obligations or in the future, or right now willful default or intentional default in the future. That is the difference between anti-parate activists and SME recovery. So that's, I want to make it very clear. We need to fully support SME recovery. There's no question about it. So that let me say why parate rise or debt recovery is important to support SMEs in their process and for them to be able to support by the government and the banks, private sector. So first reason, banks are mainly funded by the depositors, as already mentioned. Depositors funds account for nearly 80% of the bank's funding structure. So mainly 80% funding are by the depositors. Like all of you and us, everyone's deposits are there. Bank use these funds for granting credit where minimizing credit risk is utmost important for the sustainability of the bank as well as the protect the safeguards the depositors and other stakeholders' interests. So without that, no economy can survive. The banking crisis or depositors money losing money is the last thing in any economic need to experience. We have little bit of experience in the past where some of the small finance companies, even bigger ones like the finance ETI collapsed. We saw the pain that depositors went through, and even some of the illegal deposit making institutions misuse depositor funds, that we saw the depositors' pain that gone through. That's a small one. Banking sector has a much bigger exposure. Therefore, banks' ability to protect public funds through depositors and stability and reliability of the banking sector contributing to the overall financial health of the country. Secondly, and I can see a lot of bankers are here, Nigerian banks use the parate execution as a last resource to recover non-performing loans in advances of borrowers, mostly willful defaulters. I say emphasize that mostly willful defaulters and unliable borrowers. There are two groups. One is willful defaulters. Obviously, we shouldn't have any support for willful defaulters. Secondly, unviable borrowers. What do you mean by unviable borrowers? Borrowers' viability to meet the obligation is no longer there. There's a responsibility for the banks to recover whatever the way that they should be recovered depositors' money. Further, parate laws provide the structural and legal means for banks to recover overdue loans. And you have listened already to the debate recently going on. The bank's inability to recover some of the large loans that there are a lot of debate even in the parliament, saying that make allegations against the bank, saying that not being able to recover. That's mainly because these are not obviously properly constituted loans, and no parate rise can be executed because of the weaknesses in some of the loans. Fourth, parate rise prevent borrowers from mismanagement of loan proceeds and diversion of the business funds towards different purposes. As I said, different purposes, deviating from the respective loan agreements. Fifth, in the absence of credit risk mitigating measures such as parate rise, banks will be compelled to be extremely selective in lending, and the availability of finance, access to finance, will be limited. This will disturb the economy to revive and achieving its potential. So let me give some simple examples. I always make these two examples. not only SMEs, but even a small borrower like, for example, poor farm. So why they have been able to go to the bank and the mortgage their jewelry that they have, because banks have been able to recover the dues because they have a collateral. So that's a very easiest way to access to credit by people who don't have credit worthiness. And easier within 24 hours, within a day, they can go to bank and take that. Imagine if there was no such ability for the banks to recover the loans, small loans given to these people, and there will be no such facility. Now that's in the difficult times, that has been very useful for access to credit to MSME, small farmers and everyone. That's one point. And the second point, when if you look at this three-wheeler or small business doing leasing to tourism sector, they have been able to continue their business because they have access to finance, because the ability to recover all these instruments or the assets are much easier than the PARATE rights execution right now we have. This is where, in my view, this PARATE law is obviously old one that has to be strengthened further to minimize the time taken to recover the asset, so that business can survive, business can continue, while the borrower who is not viable can basically transfer that asset to someone who can run the business. What we need to protect is not the unable borrower, but the enterprise or the business. If we have very short period of recovery, for example, like the leasing of a civil or something, or mortgaging of a property, then within a short period, if the bank can transfer that asset to someone who can continue the business, then business will be protected. Then borrower will be given a kind of a revival, so that at least, so then business can continue. Borrower will have a different solution by giving the asset to the bank, and then let the enterprise to continue and let the employment to continue without making the enterprise bankrupt, but the borrower can be bankrupt. Other important aspect that what I think, in addition to strengthening the PARATE execution price, make it more efficient, that is the amendment or revision we need. Other important part is the bankruptcy laws that we don't have in this country. I came from India just now. India introduced this bankruptcy law some time ago. That has been very successful in transforming businesses and transferring businesses, those are not viable, and continue those businesses to be able to viable by be able to have proper legal framework to declare bankruptcy and let the businesses run by someone else who can run the business. That's the second important the legislation and reform we need. I'm sure, I know government is now drafting legislation similar to Indian bankruptcy law that will further facilitate this transition and continue businesses from one borrower to other borrower, so that business can continue. That's the second important one. I think, I'm sure if Dinesh was here, he would be able to comment on the research of that. Then let me just share with you some of the actions taken by the central bank in the recent past to assist, support, stress borrowers, including SMEs. That's why I say we are supporting SMEs. We want to continue support. Since 2019, we have been providing concessions to SMEs and affected borrowers due to Sunday attack, COVID-19 pandemic, and recently economic crisis. So, especially in January 2021, we issued a circular. Bankers know the suspension of recovery actions against SME Padimillas for 6 months, subject to banks and borrowers reaching payment agreement. Obviously, all will have to be subject to reaching payment agreement that recover the deposit of money. It specified the licensed banks should not pass new resolutions for PARATE actions and to cease auctioning for already passed resolutions. That was during the very difficult times. The interest rates are going up to 30%, and now the interest rates are much lower. This is the time to continue that process and basically reprice the loans at a much lower rates. Similarly, licensed banks are requested to, from time to time, to suspend recovery actions, including PARATE execution, against all credit facilities that have been classified as non-performing or no after 1st April 2020 until 31st December 2022. Until end 2022, the usual PARATE actions were suspended, obviously, that we see impact on the banking sector. In order to enable the borrowers to give some space and SMEs give some space to arrange timely repayments along with the gradual recovery of their cash flows. In addition, banks are also requested to provide certain other measures, such as conversion of capital and interest to a term loan at a concession rate that to be recovered starting at a later date, waiving off penal interest rates on NPLs during the moratorium period, cessation of early settlement of fee, etc. So that's also in our regulation, the circular that we issued. In March 2023, instruction was issued to licensed banks to suspend recovery actions against credit facilities classified as non-performing or no after January 2020 on a case-by-case basis. Remember, this is not much broader basis, on a case-by-case basis, consequent to an objective assessment by a particular bank. So bank will have to assess on the future repayment capacity, viability of the business. That's viable upon the condition that the borrower submits an acceptable repayment plan. So if the borrower can submit an acceptable repayment plan on a viability basis, then obviously we have asked banks to reconsider, restructure those loans. And in fact, I have numbers, I don't want to share the numbers, how much the value of approved the request on that basis, 5,800 billion of the value of the loans, those are restructured so far under this facility. Then people talk about PARATE execution. So we have numbers collected from banks, PARATE execution during after almost 4 years of suspension. To 2023, there have been 557 cases of PARATE execution executed on the basis of legal process, and value is only 38 billion of value compared to a huge amount of stage 3 loans. Its total percentage of total loans only 0.4%. Percentage of total impaired loans, stage 3 loans, is 2.7%. That's a small amount that non-viable or willful defaulters. That's the amount so far banks have recovered. What's the way forward? Obviously, we're going to issue another. In fact, in March 2022, we issued a circular on guidelines on establishment of post-COVID-19 revival units in licensed banks in order to identify and assist underperforming and non-performing borrowers affected by the pandemic that are facing financial difficulties due to the reduction of income or sales, reduction or impairment of business operation, or the closure of business. So that under those considerations, we have made a request. Purpose of establishing such revival units, is business revival units by all the banks, are to revive viable businesses with the potential of contributing to the national economic growth, thus facilitating unwinding of moratorium in a sustainable manner. So remember, these are only for genuine SMEs and viable businesses, not for willful defaulters or anti-PARATE activists. Then loan transfer to under this facility, there have been number of loans so far during 2023 transferred to business revival units, 2,500, more than 2,500 has been transferred. Amount outstanding is 85 billion of this transferred business units. Now, in addition, we are now currently in the process of issuing another circular on expanding the scope of business revival units. So we want to strengthen the business revival units to help SMEs to revive their businesses by introducing further improvements to the guidelines on establishment of post-COVID-19 revival units in licensed banks, for which the stakeholder consultations are also in the progress. We have shared circular with the banks. The proposed circular we will issue it soon will include detailed guidelines on assessing viability of borrowers. To assess viability of the borrower, different revival mechanisms, how they can be revived, and the governance structure of the revivals, how revivals should be governed also. There are detailed guidelines. It is further intended to introduce a multi-credit arrangement among licensed banks. So if there are borrowers who have exposed to different banks, they have to discuss with other banks as a multi-credit arrangement among licensed banks on voluntary basis between the concerning banks and the borrowers to address the financial or business risks faced by corporates who have obtained credit facility from more than one license. That's mainly for the corporate, those who have got more than one facility from the banks, from different banks. Though this proposed revival mechanism, it is expected to identify the fundamentally viable borrowers who are either under stress, like SMEs, who are either under stress or expected to fall under stress. So this is a mechanism to help. The revival mechanism will be developed through a collaborative approach between banks and borrowers. Upon reaching a mutual agreement between parties, the PARATE execution can also be suspended for a pre-agreed period with agreement with both parties to allow the business to revive. Business can be revived. Obviously, we are asking them to give them some more time for the revival. However, this is important. If a borrower is fundamentally unable to revive, as I said earlier, or fail to revive within the pre-agreed period, the bankers may opt to use their credit recovery actions. Whatever the credit recovery action, they have to exercise credit recovery actions to recover depositors' money. Whether they are, if they are unable or fail to revive, I think that's a responsibility of the banks to recover depositors' money. Then, in addition, there's another new initiative to help SMEs, which is called National Credit Guarantee Institution, that we are now working with ADB. Ministry of Finance has incorporated what they call NCGI, National Credit Guarantee Institution, which will offer credit guarantees to support the recovery of SMEs with the view to mitigating potential credit risk in lending to SMEs. These efforts will further encourage the financial institution to facilitate support SMEs further. So this is the important initiative, and in addition, government is working on legislation bankruptcy, so that will also facilitate to transfer businesses to people who can run the business and let the people who can cannot recover the business move out of the business, and let the enterprise be protected, but not the borrower be protected out of the business money. So that's why, in my view, this the suspending or PARATE rights will not help SMEs. That will help only some borrowers, those have already borrowed out of deposit money, and that will help them to not to default the deposit money. But to have access to SMEs, for MSMEs to be able, or MSMEs to be able to continue their businesses, because their businesses, it's important to strengthen the access to finance. This is one of the ways that we can access to finance. I think this is where I agree that this has to be revised. This has to be strengthened further. If you look at PARATE law, is a old one. In any other country where debt recovery process, maximum 3 to 6 months, the asset can be recovered. That can be passed to someone who can run the business, who can use the asset effectively for the economy. What will happen for unnecessary delays will basically will not have any value of the assets, because they can't run the business. That's why we see even the large number of vehicles in the yards are basically not being able to utilize, because no one can use, because those are basically process and also legal actions. Even some of the large assets, if those can't, one example is, so a lot of countries, the mortgage business. If the borrower is unable to meet the obligations, within 3 months they acquire the property and let someone else to take the property, and the borrower is bailed out. So that is more efficient. That will help economy. That will help SMEs. That will improve access to finance. That's why it's important. So please, I think this my important point is to understand the difference between the SMEs. Obviously, we all want to support the SMEs, but not the anti-PARATE activists. Thank you very much.
Thank you too, Governor. I suspect that you may not be staying too long with us, but I thought to ask this question. You mentioned about India and the success that you said that they have enjoyed. Would you be able to help us appreciate how the response of those people are when their businesses are handed over to others who can run the business? You mentioned that that has been tried and done in India. What has been the success rate of that acceptance of those provisions? Has that been all right?
No, that's obviously, it is the law of the country now in India. That was long time ago. That is basically helping the businesses to continue. And also borrower is also bailed out. For example, borrower, if he is unable to run the business, then he is kind of bailed out. And he can declare bankruptcy and move out of the business, and someone else can take over and continue the business. And that's good for the borrower without being hanging and not meeting the obligations, and all without being able to run the business. And that will lose the value of the asset, and that will reduce employment of this business, because the borrower is not able to run the business. It's someone else who can take the value of the business based on the value of the business. And then he probably infuse some more capital and continue the business. Important one is this will protect the enterprise and protect the employment, not the borrower who for some reasons, there may be reasons beyond their control, there may be reasons within their control. Unfortunately, if the business cannot be run effectively, someone else should take the business and take it over. That is best for the economy. That will keep production process, that will keep employment going on. And only the borrower would be bailed out after the declared bankruptcy. So then he will try to start new. That is why even the US bankruptcy law is about, once you declare bankruptcy, then he or she wouldn't have access, or company wouldn't have access to credit for some time. They have to earn that over a period of time by starting zero, and then gradually that's a process. That's how countries' economies work. That's how the efficient financial intermediates process. That's why we need to make it more efficient.
One other little thought, you also mentioned about guidelines that shortly to be issued, and we appreciate that those innovations, if I may use the term innovations, are going to be brought in and actioned. Now, obviously, if this kind of engagement is going to be required, where these guidelines then require the banks to engage with the businesses and really provide a kind of a holding the hand kind of aspect to be able to help them to move on forward. I am just curious, do we have in all of our banking systems or within the banks all over the country who are having to deal with these large numbers, like 1 million SMEs, are they equipped to be able to provide that kind of very concerned, holding the hand kind of assistance to be able to have them as sustainable entities?
Yeah, that's an important point. When we introduced this business revival units in 2023 in response to economic crisis to support SMEs, obviously we issued a circular, and banks established, I think bankers can share that more information, established business revival units in the other banks. But I personally, we see there are weaknesses. It's not that all the banks and at the same regional level, branch level, that has not been effective. That I have to admit. This is the reason why, based on the complaints we are getting from SMEs and businesses, that some of the banks, mainly probably they have rival units in the headquarters. They are not giving proper instructions to all the branches to do the same kind of engagement with the businesses. And they may not have gone to the same level as we expected. That's why we have now strengthened and more granular guidelines now going to be issued, so that banks will have much more. I think I'm not protecting banks here. It's clearly we are getting a lot of complaints from the borrowers. Despite their requests, they have not been heard properly. That's why we have to strengthen this guideline. That I think is the responsibility of bankers to support. The bankers are their own customers. Banks cannot do good business without their customers without being helped. That's a mutual interest for the banks as well as customers that can help. Important point about them saying is that they should customer session should be held if they can revive businesses at all levels, even up to the ground levels, lowest level. There are weaknesses in the banking system. Not all the banks are doing it properly. That's why we are going to strengthen this, and we will be closely monitoring and there will be.
Thank you very much, Governor. We appreciate the clarification that you brought in and the distinction which you also placed before us about SMEs on the one hand and willful defaulters and the PARATE law and how it operates. If you can stay with us, that's fine, but we're going to move on now.
Can I ask one question from the governor?
Yeah, please.
Okay, we just only that little time that we have. Yes.
My name is Lupeti, representing the hotel industry. Now we have a problem, Governor, that we have borrowed in US dollars at the beginning of our hotel constructions. Now the two operators are not paying us in dollars, so we can't repay the banks in dollars. So we have a major issue. There was a time before the operators were paying us in dollars and we were directly paying to the banks in dollars. So this need to be resolved because we are right now in a major difficulty of paying back our loans back in dollars because we can't, we have no way of getting dollars unless the operators who get dollars to Sri Lanka, they are paid in dollars by the customers. So if they pay us in dollars, then it is easier for us to repay our loans in dollars.
That obviously nothing to do with, you have to deal with the two operators and how you've been doing your business model. So I think there's
actually,
and this I mean the practice you mentioned earlier,
yes,
with the expectation that you have borrowed in dollars,
yes,
the expectation you will earn in dollars, and then later for some reason because of the agreements did not work properly or something for some reason that you had not been able to receive.
No, it is not that, Governor. It is not that, Governor. There was a regulation in the country that the operators were able to pay us in dollars. Then subsequently, central bank changed that regulation, and as a result, now even if the operators want to pay, so they can't pay. There is some situation like that.
No, the situation is that that's the country's law even earlier, is that any transaction between two residents is a law has been always be there that it has payment will have to happen unless approval is given in rupees. That's the law of the country. If you are getting in dollars from a non-resident, that's fine. But if you are getting if you a transaction between local company and another local company, that has to happen in rupees. That's a country's law. That even that was earlier. They are probably I don't know how that basically.
But there was a provision. There was a provision that they.
I think Anura, we'll have to keep that for an offline discussion because we'll allow our webinar to go because there's so much that needs to be covered. But we appreciate the point made, and I'm sure this can be brought forward by ICC at a separate date and opportunity as it's presented and brought with the Governor of the Central. But thank you once again, Dr. Nandalal, for having shared all of what you did and the time that you've spent with us despite the schedule, which has been quite busy on your side. One other thing that I'd like to mention, again, because there was a question, that there are over 1 million SMEs and they provide 45% of the employment and contribute 52% to Sri Lanka's GDP. That's the estimate. Somebody made that inquiry just now while the discussion was going on, and we thought we'd clarify that on this webinar. Thank you very much again, and we pause for a little while to accommodate a special message from our webinar sponsor, ACCA, and then on to our panel discussion. Thank you again. Let me introduce the panel now. And as was mentioned by the Governor of the Central Bank, quite a number of people representing the banks are here with us. Sujiva Rajapaksa, Chairman, People's Bank Sri Lanka, is here. Then we have Sujiva Mudalige, who is an independent director and former managing partner of PricewaterhouseCoopers Sri Lanka. Sujiva is joining us at the moment from Australia. Thank you very much. Then we have Dilshan Rodrigo, Deputy CEO of Union Bank of Colombo. Then we have the President, National Trade Protection Council of Sri Lanka, Mr. Mahendra Pereira. Welcome. Then Sashi Kandambi is the General Manager and CEO at the National Savings Bank. Then too, we have joining us from the United Kingdom, Dr. Priyanka Baddavitana, who's the Managing Director, British Sri Lanka Maldives Forum for Business and Trade. Then too, we have Nalin Samaranayaka, who is the Assistant General Manager, Credit Supervision and Recoveries, Commercial Bank of Ceylon. Then we've already heard a word or two from Anura Lokuhetty, past President of the Hotels Association of Sri Lanka, or TASL, and Chairman, Asian Council on Tourism. And he joins us from Lyon in France. And last but certainly not least, we have President's Council Maura Gunavansa, who's also with us. And that's the panel. And the conversation now will be handed over to Tishan Subasinghe, who is the Vice President, Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka. So over to you, Tishan.
Thank you very much, Arun. Do really appreciate. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So in the interest of time, I'll straight away move on to the panel discussion. So I've got an interesting panel. There are mainly three stakeholders. We have the industrialists, those representatives representing the SME sector. Then we have bankers and the regulator. Regulator would have probably left, but this happened to be the panel, and we have the audience. Now, on one hand, the SMEs, starting from the East attack and then the COVID and the economic crisis, are facing difficulty. I mean, we all do know about it. And their endurance being tested, maybe beyond limits. On the other hand, we have banks and other financial institutions who are vulnerable to volatile economic conditions, and accordingly, the depositors' money also may be at stake for such vulnerabilities. And any such vulnerability ultimately may have an impact on financial system stability. Many banks are also already taking a hit due to increased NPL levels. Also, it's likely that the banks will also have to take a hit on their ISPs and SLDBs investments. So this is the backdrop. So in this context, today our conversation would be whether the suspension of PARATE rights be considered as all curable panacea for the survival of the SMEs, or whether there are other alternatives. And Anura actually brought up a valid matter. We'll go into detail later. So to start our conversation, I believe it's important for us to know a little bit about the legal perspective in implementing the PARATE law. So, ladies and gentlemen, in the year 1990, there were two important pieces of legislation which were brought into effect. One is Recovery of Loans by Banks Special Provisions Act, number 4 of 1990. Then Debt Recovery Special Provisions Act, number 2 of 1990, as amended in 1994. Other than that, there have been amendments in between, and also there are some decided cases which really provided interpretation on certain terms, and accordingly the PARATE practices that the banks been exercising. One such case is HNB versus Chellaya Ramachandran. It was decided in 2005. Then, interestingly, last year, 13th November 2023, there was this case, Sunpack Engineers Private Limited and another versus DFCC Bank and 11 others. So, to further elaborate on the legal perspective, we have President's Counsel, Mr. Maura Gunavansa. Mr. Gunavansa, would you like to elaborate on the legal aspect of the PARATE law? So, Gunawan, sir. All right. Maybe he is not connected. Maybe he was connected. So in that context, let me just shed some light. I think I have the qualification to do it. What happened? This PARATE law, in fact, it was as a result of a report produced by the debt recovery. Uh, uh, there was a committee formed, and the particular committee reviewed the possibility of introducing PARATE action and issued a report in 1983. So it took 7 years up until 1990 to affect this law because there was huge uh, opposition or there were opposite viewpoint from the bar association. So it took at least 7 years to affect the law. And in 2005, it was decided that these third-party mortgages cannot be auctioned through PARATE rights, which was later changed in 2023. So, 7th bench Supreme Court panel of judges last year decided, or even the interpretation of the borrower was further expanded. So even the third-party properties which were mortgaged against the borrowings would be auctioned. So which means the Court of Law also is taking kind of a tight view with respect to the PARATE rights enjoyed by the banking system. So that's the actually backdrop, and government clearly stated new laws to be introduced. That's again what I understood, not to ease up the law, but to to further streamline smoothen the process. So that's basically the legal background. So from that, let me move on to Mr. Sujio Rajapaksa. So Rajapaksa, you are a chairman of a government bank. And how do you look at the PARATE rights enjoyed by a bank? And do you think that it's the bank's first option to exercise the PARATE rights, or is it the last resort? So, from the public sector bank's perspective, what are the sentiments?
Thank you, Dishan, and thank you, ICC, and especially Dinesh for having me here. And also, I must thank on behalf of banks and NBFI, for governor to set the tone, especially. And I think that's very clear, precise. And in the meantime, now I can see there are two veteran bankers. Their lovely faces are here, Dilshan and Sashi. So my role may be a little different, but still, I have been there in the bank, People's Bank, one of the largest banks, as a chairman for last little over 4 years. And I have extensive experience, different experience, probably in dealing with, the customers. What we need to understand, Tishan, here is, I think the governor also touched so many times about the important couple of words. The most important and powerful 5-letter word in the banking industry, as far as I know, is the trust, TRUST. So if we, the security in the foundation of trust, it's a security is the trust. If I may not, or you may not deposit money in a bank where, if you don't have trust, you must have a faith in the banking system. So that's very, very important. So the main objective of PARATE is to basically protect depositors. You need to protect depositors' money that have been basically lent to borrowers. Obviously, Ghana also touched on that. So as a result, now although it's I believe others also might be able to tell now, the PARATE word is basically used only in Sri Lanka, if I'm not mistaken. But that doesn't mean that the other countries do not do that, do not exercise. Now, in fact, I spoke to some of my counterparts, especially in the Asian region, South Asian region mainly, of course, they have sometimes very stringent rules. If you take India straight away, you can go and, the file action. And not action, actually, you take your assets, for auction, and you take over those assets. Like Bangladesh, like Pakistan, but of course, Pakistan has a different kind of rules, but which takes longer time. But in our case, although it says PARATE, now you exercise the rule. You exercise the rule up to the extent, but in having said that, of course, we do have, we just don't go and, take over assets of, our customers. That will be the last resort, Tisha. So basically, if we do not do PARATE execution, what will happen? I think that also, the SME sector, especially who are very particular about this PARATE execution, should understand, because that will definitely enhance the debt recovery. If that is very important. And obviously, reduce NPL, but NPL has become a major issue, and the risk management perspective, because lending practices will all depend on the, the risk management and the legal compliance and customer satisfaction and those things, which is very, very important for us to understand that. But if banking industry do not have those, those things, it will definitely lead to lose faith of depositors, which is very, very important. Now, recently, I read a article or other report published by World Bank, Tishan. But there, of course, that's a Bangladesh report. But of course, it says that this region, NPL number 1 is Bangladesh, number 2 is Sri Lanka. So that clearly specified. And also it says NPL ratios rises due to, there are 3 reasons given, but 2 reasons are here, which is very important. One is poor payment discipline of borrowers. Poor payment discipline of borrowers. The other one is weak regulatory enforcement. So those also, I think, very, very important for us to understand. Apart from that, bankers are basically sandwiched from different areas. Why do I say that? Of course, we have regulators. Now, my bank being a state-owned bank, we have, obviously, you have CBSL, and also other one is SMB, and you are there, you are also sitting there, ICSL, coming out with various standards and things like that. Then our auditor is Auditor General. Then, of course, in our case, our things are escalated to court in the parliament. And the public perception, you would have seen recently, my God, there have been major hue and cry about, now we have, in our case, we have written off 54 billion and things like that. That's totally wrong, right? And also international rating agencies, we need to understand. And the lenders, I mean, we are working in a massive, regulatory environment as well. But that, having said that, that doesn't mean that, we don't just simply disregard bank, the customers. That is very, very important. We are very particular. But to tell you, I think other bankers also will tell, it takes generally more than a year for us to get into the, the PARATE execution level. Of course, we do have our discussions, which is very, very important. So then only it will come to, the situation where we look at PARATE, because there are willful, as governor said, there are willful defaulters. Banker is able to identify who is the honest person and the willful defaulter. So then obviously, bank is not happy. I hope that I have explained what your concern.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, Mr. Rajapaksa. So now let me move on to the industry. I would request Mr. Mahendra Pereira to answer this question. So Mahendra, you are the president of National Trade Protection Council. What is the council viewpoint on the PARATE rights enjoyed by banks?
Yeah. First of all, thank you very much for your invitation to participate in this value webinar. Actually, we formed our association in 2020. It's because of this the COVID pandemic time. Now we have already 4 years experience. What is experience in our country? So I would like to explain more about these SMEs, as you know. But as you know, now 52% to the GDP is contributing by SMEs, and backbone of the country is SMEs. It's nearly 80% of the businesses, right? And higher segment of employment with 45% of the total employment and sustaining approximately 10 million people. As such, individuals and business enterprises in our nature do sustain and protect the country's economy. As you are aware, SMEs have faced many continuous drawbacks from 2018. 2018 civil rights, 2019 East attack, 2020 COVID pandemic 2 years, and declaration of bankruptcy in 2020 March by CBSL governor, which were never previously encountered by SMEs since independence in 1948. All participants and everybody knows these, especially if we go for these three incidents like East attack, COVID, and the bankruptcy. Our lifetime, we didn't face this type of things in Sri Lanka last 76 years, right? So this is not the normal situation now we are facing, right? And also already governor declared as bankruptcy from 2022 March. So till now we are in bankrupt country. We are already bankrupt, right? We never come out from the bankrupt. So in that scenario, if can suspend the PARATE rights help SME recovery? My simple answer is yes. Why I am saying, I already explained what has happened. Now, as you the other thing, for these reasons, the Supreme Court already declared, right? If we other than the political figures, central bank and the monetary board totally responsible for the bankruptcy. So we are not responsible for the bankruptcy. We contribute 52% to the GDP till 1948, right? So without coming out this bankruptcy, if you are going to get the under PARATE law the properties of SMEs, is it fair? Right now, is it fair?
Yeah.
So no, 1 minute. And the other thing is, we are telling, okay, there may be willful defaulter, yes. So we ask you, okay, unbundle this thing, right? Unbundle the depositors, unbundle the loan borrowers in the third stage. Unbundle, then you can see what has happened to our borrowings, right? Then only we can see what has really happened, And recently, Justice Minister already informed in the Parliament 602 billion outstanding in two state banks, Bank of Ceylon and People's Bank. So is it SMEs? So I want to know. So please unbundle these borrowings so we can see what has happened. Then only we can see the solutions. This is not so. We are totally against if we going for PARATE these days because we are in a bankrupt country.
I understand. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Mahendra. We'll get back to you again. So my next question is to Shashi. Shashi, you are a senior banker. Can you just elaborate on the banking practices which prevailed pre-PARATE rights law and how it got changed post-implementation of the PARATE law?
Thanks, ICC, for the invite. Tishan, am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible, Shashi.
Okay, thanks. Your question is how banks did recoveries before PARATE came in, that is before 1990. 1990, we followed the normal debt recovery through the court systems, and it took a long time. As I remember, certain cases went on to more than even 10 years. When a borrower defaults, we go to the courts and file an action. And mostly the willful defaulters never cited the banks or even at the courts. And because of the backlogs prevailed in the court system at that time, even to get a calling date, it took about 6 months. So there were clients who enjoyed the property and some people abandoned, as Dr. Nandalal said, the enterprises went into sort of a closed shop. The properties just remain untouched. Either the bank could not use it because there were no right to access the property, nor the client, the borrower also enjoy the property. So it became completely abandoned properties and no use at all. And we still have certain properties. If you remember that there was a good industry, prawn farming. Due to a disease, the whole industry collapsed, and the litigation didn't provide the access to those properties. There were no way it was to be given to any other for good usage, and it became abandoned. So it was very cumbersome. It took time, money, and therefore I feel that at that time, banks, especially private sector banks, didn't want to, because of the cumbersome process and the cost involved in the debt recovery, didn't want, the SME lending was not much attractive at that time. But Tishan, I want to tell you something. This is PARATE came, it was actually got extended to the private banks in 1990 with this PARATE law. But state banks, in fact, had it in their own provisions. It was available to them.
Yeah, it's been there since 1930s, I believe. I think the State Mortgage Bank was the first to.
State Mortgage, National Savings Bank, Bank of Ceylon, People's Bank.
People's
they had
Bank,
yes.
Yeah.
Then the second part of your question is, after it came, the PARATE rights came into the power and the banks could enjoy that. Private banks also started looking at SMEs more positively. And earlier, the SMEs were more concentrated to the state banks and there was limited access available to them. And with the PARATE coming in, the banks realized that there was an easy recovery. The recovery process was much shorter because we don't have to go to courts. We just pass the resolution, come and do the auction and access the property and maybe liquidate and make use of for better usage. So with that, there was SME could access financing from the private sector, and the pricing, I think it was mentioned in some of the other seminars also. Before 1990, if a SME could approach a bank for a facility, the pricing, because of the risk get factored in the pricing, the interest rate was very high. Whereas after 1990, it became relatively lower because of the risk that we look when we look at when we price a loan proposal. One of the factors that we look at is the recoverability of the collateral given to us.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Shashi. You very well explained your point. Now I would move on to Anura. Anura, you already made some valid observations. And we all know that, in the banking industry, the tourism sector represents the highest NPL ratio, as per the statistics. And we all know the reason for that. So as the past president of the Hoteliers Association, can you explain with some case studies how the PARATE process affected the industry negatively?
No, actually, thank you for this opportunity. If you look at tourism industry, unlike any other industry, any major natural disaster or anything that affects the tourism. So if you look at last few years, I don't have to go into detail, it started with the Easter Sunday attack, COVID, then economic crisis, all these things really hampered the smooth operation of the hospitality industry. Particularly, that the hotels, to build a hotel, we need substantial amount of money, and unlike other industries, capital intensive business. So most of the people, and also just take a case like if a hotel has started building in 2016 or something and open in 2018, and then suddenly you are first faced with the Easter Sunday attack, then followed up with other calamities. So as a result, then naturally they are in a difficult period, difficult situation to pay the loans. And I have nothing against what you call PARATE action, right? Willful people who are not trying to pay their loans, there must be a system to collect that. But you have to look at the circumstances. Now, if you are faced with situations which are totally beyond your control, then what bank should do is bank must call them, analyze the position, and also look at how they can continue their businesses. Now, in Sri Lanka, tourism, if you look at, hotel industry consists of about 60% of SMEs or more. And most of them own one hotel, two hotels, or small number of hotels, and sometimes certain small scale of businesses. But if you look at the revenue that is generated by this industry, is great. Even the last year we had 1.4 million tourists, little more than that, and about 1.8 billion US dollars. We are looking at 2.3 million tourists and about 4 billion US dollars this year. And it is achievable. And if Sri Lanka's economy is to survive, the best industry to safeguard it is tourism. So what we are saying is banks should call the people and they should have discussions. And what we are asking is reduce the interest rates for a particular period of time, extend the repayment period, and help to sustain that business. So we are not asking any other concessions. We are just asking them for the sustainability of the industry. And also with the multiplier effect, this tourism plays a vital role in Sri Lankan economy, because out of 1/10 of the population of this country are dependent upon tourism. And also, if you look at our region like Pakistan, India, even Indonesia, South Africa, Kenya, all these countries, some of those loans, they have reduced interest rate. And some countries, they have even taken out the accumulated interest. So we are asking to look at this in a more realistic way and also see how well this great industry can be sustained. And also by PARATE action must be the last option. I'm not against it, to be honest with you. There must be a system to safeguard the interest of the depositor. The whole banking system must survive. So there is nothing against. But we are only, our situation is, they must all, when we go to the bank, what do they first ask for? They ask for a feasibility report. So we give a feasibility report. On that feasibility only, they will give us a loan. And then now we are back. Now the country's tourism is improving. And also there is a process. Now the rates that we are getting from the foreigners are very low. So this low revenue, and also I don't have to tell you the cost of living, like in terms of vegetables, fish, and all these items, prices have gone up. So there is hardly any profits people can make out of selling at these rates. But it's not going to continue next year. In fact, yesterday we had a meeting amongst the Hotels Association, and we are looking at revising the prices. But there is no point revising prices until we maintain certain amount of demand, because survival is important. At the same time, 4 years we have kept the hotels closed. As a result, certain amount of money is required to refurbish the properties and also to continue on the businesses. So therefore, what I am asking is the bankers must. Actually, I was quite impressed with the central bank governor's keynote address, because he said that the certain instructions given to the bank are to take individual case by case, assess it, and give it a way that business can be sustained. We are not against that. Our only position is PARATE action must be the last option for the bank, because many part of, if you take the whole world, even SME sector is supported in developed economies, developing economies, and the third world countries. Every country, the most important sector is the SME. SMEs become finally the large industries over a period of time. So if you nip the bud at the beginning, then there's no future. So What we want to tell the bankers particularly is to understand the importance of this business and its multiplier effect and its impact on the society, and also to look at waiving of at least part of the interest, and also give those people a possible payment plan so
Some
that
breathing space.
exactly that's all we are asking for.
Understand. I think Aruna, you established your point. I'll get back to in the second round. Thank you. Now I'm asking this question from Dilshan. Dilshan, what would be the repercussions on suspending the PARATE right in terms of access to credit, in terms of cost of debt, etc.
Thank you for that question. Can you all hear me clearly?
Yeah, you're audible, Dilshan. Please proceed.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. So I think there's a lot of discussion we've had now. It was made very clear by the governor in terms of the support that was extended, multiple series of support over the last 4 years. As you know, businesses, SMEs, banks have had probably the most horrific period of their time in the last 4 years, and I hope that we will never have to face that kind of situation going forward. So, as someone who was driving this as a part of a systemically important bank in Sri Lanka, I can tell you my personal experience. I think we heard the previous comment Anura mentioning how important it is for banks to really care and support businesses that are in difficulty to overcome their situation and come out. So that is something I can tell you in my personal experience. We've done that. We have done that in a significant way. Initially it was the moratoriums. At one point, I remember almost 30% of our book was under moratorium during the Easter Sunday time. Thereafter, it was immediately followed by COVID, right? And at that time, there was another series of moratoriums, debt moratoriums that were given. Debt moratoriums are where you don't pay interest or capital, you don't pay anything at all, right? So it's very difficult for a bank then to sustain it from a liquidity point of view. Then, of course, we had the economic crisis. So at that point, I think we started the revival efforts with the SMEs, where we started giving them working capital finance to get back on track. And then we slowly phased out the debt moratoriums and started giving capital moratoriums only. And then there was a lot of restructuring, rescheduling done to support genuine customers to get out of the situation they were in. Obviously, for a bank to succeed, we need our customers to succeed. We are an interdependent relationship, right? So it is definitely in the bank's interest, wherever a customer is genuine, to go into multiple rounds of negotiation and support to help them come the situation. And I'm very happy, right, that the tourism after quite some time, and I can see that the recovery is now beginning to take place. But I mean, to specifically answer your question, very simply, if PARATE rights are suspended, it will send a wrong signal to the market, where it is acceptable for people to default. Banks already have seen their impairment ratios now spiraling. I mean, we are almost at threefold of where we were 4 years back. Right? Impairment ratios at around 13%. And it's 2 trillion, right? That's a very big amount for us to even sustain the banking sector. So with all that, I think what we don't want is to create a moral hazard, where genuine customers, also see that there is undue advantage given in terms of not going after the PARATE rights as a last resort, right? So we have, despite all this, we have taken for granted the safety and the soundness of our banking sector. So I think the important point is, if this were to be if PARATE rights are suspended, this will undoubtedly result in the cost of debt increasing, And more importantly, there'll be reluctance on the part of the banks to grant credit, even to the genuine customers, because it's difficult for us to identify who is genuine and not genuine when we grant the loan. So as a result of that, many genuine customers will be inconvenienced. So
Thank
the
you.
impact on the economy could be significant, as it would slow lending, particularly to the SMEs, which will further impact the already tough business sentiment that we are in. So I think that's the essence of what I want to say.
Thank you, Dilshan. I think you have.
PARATE rights.
Thank you, Dilshan. I think you have established your point. Now I'll move on to Dr. Anil Badavitana. Dr. Badavitana, have the PARATE rights enjoyed by the bank become the real problem for the survival of the SMEs? Is it the sole problem for the survival, like at the moment? I know there are economic issues, etc. And from the operational management's point of view, is it the real problem?
Yes, thank you for having me on this. Actually, I'm wearing two hats as a specialized banker till the end of 2016. And since then, I've been involved in business and trade. Now, when the financial crisis happened in 2007, lasted till 2009, I was in the Maldives as managing director of Housing Development Finance, a specialized banking unit set up by the IFC and the AGB. One lesson we learned was that responsible finance and principles of client protection are actually what banks should apply. Because basically, to get out of this crisis, they had a solution. There are certain companies that are called too big to fail. Now, the disparity is the SMEs are too small to survive. So why should the government and the central banks bail out the companies that they call are too big to fail because of systemic risk that they could engineer into the system, and not bail out the SMEs? Now, I think the central bank governor said that India is moving ahead, but of course America was much earlier. They have moved ahead with solutions, because all we are interested are in solutions. By leveling the field, you can actually treat SMEs as important as the big entities that the governments bail out. Not just the government, the central banks bail out all over the world. America, it happened in 1988 with the Grand Street National Bank, where they bought, it's what you call a bad bank, which buys the debts of other banks. And in India, now they are formulating policies to make debt restructuring or asset restructuring banks, national banks, where the government takes the major share and the other banks actually collaborate. They also become shareholders, which similar to the CRIB, the Credit Information Bureau, where all the banks are members or shareholders so that you can share information. The problem, the question you asked, is it impacting the SME sector? The suspension has to be selective. There are willful defaulters or bad loans that the bank has given. The bank has a duty to protect their clients, which is through due diligence, make sure that when they give a loan, the client has the ability to pay back. And we are in this bankruptcy situation as a nation because those who gave us loans did not do due diligence properly, whether Mattala can generate funds to pay back the loan, right? Whether the port, Hambantota port can pay back, whether conference centers have revenue generation to pay back the loans. They didn't do the due diligence. So that is the fault of the lending institution. So if the central bank is the lender of the last resort who regulates the banking industry, coming in as banks have three options. They can continue business as usual, right? Write off their debts write down their debts rather, using PARATE execution, where the value of the asset is not enough to cover the loans, because through time, what happens is sometimes some of this machinery and stuff deteriorates. And then they have another workout units. What the governor said, they've given regulations to the bank to make workout units. Now, just giving regulations won't matter. The banks should have specialized knowledge how to work out in collaboration with the client, the stressed assets and the stressed businesses. How do they revive them? As I said, are they too small to survive, right? How do you make them survive? So really, it is a workout unit that the bank can establish in the first place. But I think the solution, the greater solution, is for the government to set up a national bad bank. That means a national asset management bank, where they buy the debts from the bank so that you release the burden from the banks to the national asset management. And those banks, all the banks have to be, offloading their NPLs, have to be shareholders of that bank. Now, India is moving in this direction. I'm surprised that the central government missed on that point, right? Because India, if you look at the Indian central banking, in 22, from late 22, they've been working on this, setting up a national asset management or national asset restructuring, where the people who are affected will be consulted how to recover their businesses. And then if they can't, obviously the bankruptcy laws apply, and then they'll have to part with their assets, right? So selective PARATE execution, not en bloc suspension of PARATE. In certain cases, yes. If you are working with a bank's workout unit, working closely with the enterprise to make it revive, right? Then that is one solution. If you're organizing, the government is taking the initiative with the central bank to set up a national asset management, or a bad bank, as they call it, right? The national bad bank. They will buy all the bad debts, and then they will have specialized people to actually help the industry as well as manage that debt and make it a profitable venture. It has happened. If you look up the Grand Street National Bank of the US, they have been profitable. And India thinks that they also can do that because NPL is a big issue. And the other thing you got to realize is what collateral they offer. The big businesses that are too big to fail, they offer their machinery, their land, but the small businesses, what do they offer? Even the residential property. So can you use PARATE execution, which is a board resolution followed by auction, right? Simple as that. There's no recourse to the law or the courts. The law is that the banks can pass a board resolution, publish it in the papers, and then go for auction, right? But if it's a residential property, do you think it is right to deprive somebody because the bank has made a bad lending? Due diligence is the responsibility of the bank. Principles of client protection and responsible finance, which came out as a result of 2007-2009 financial crisis. We were part of the practitioners of responsible finance at that time in the Maldives. We managed to get NPLs down to below 0.5% by working with the customers. There will be willful defaulters or unviable businesses, very small percentage. But then the problem is you treat the big entities too big to fail, and you treat the small entities too small to survive in two different ways. So that in a policy-making decision, the government should decide to set up a national bad bank to buy off so that the bankers can continue with lessons learned. Of course, the risk appetite of each bank is different. So that's why when they make up a workout unit, they have to select the people who gave the loans, who have studied how they've gone bad, what industries they come from. All that has to be given because we are in a crisis situation. It's not the 2007-2009 global crisis, but the country is in a crisis situation. So you can't just put a moratorium and say, okay, it worked for 2 years, from 2020 to 2022. Because of COVID, we suspended PARATE and it worked. No, it should work continuously, but selective suspension of PARATE, not just blanket suspension.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I will again, revert to you for you to give concluding remarks. Nalin, can you kind of share your viewpoint as an officer in charge of credit supervision and recovery on the credit behavior of the SME customers? And also, do you find many willful defaulters?
Yeah, thanks for inviting me for this discussion. First of all, I must say this SMEs, what we have seen, they genuinely want to come out of their problems. They come to the bank and discuss. And apart from this, central bank moratoriums came into effect from several moratoriums. I think 6 to 7 moratoriums came in.
And after that, even banks extended this moratorium period to customers looking at their cash flows and ability to pay the debts. And also what we have seen, the certain customers, they want to reduce their debt component by disposing some idle assets, and they have done that. What we have seen mostly, most of these borrowers, apart from these banks and finance company borrowings, they have gone to informal money lending side. Then it has become a serious burden for them. Then they are going into a deeper problem in servicing their debts. What we always advise customers, that is what happening now. They come to the bank and discuss. Because we have the expertise how to support them, because these are our customers. We need to support them. That is, we have that point. And also, when it comes to PARATE thing, also, I must say that we don't take decisions to proceed with PARATE as a open, immediate first action, I would say. Right? We very carefully we look at the position of the customers, and as a last resort only we go for these actions, because the problem is going for PARATE won't make a good assistance for the bank, as even governor said. Disposing of assets, we have to keep it for a longer period. Therefore, we don't go for that. That is the thing I think I want to add.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nalin. Sujiva, now last but not the least, the final question is to you in the first round. I have done it with a purpose. You have been a prominent consultant, so one of the sought after consultants in the country. So now you have listened to both the SME sector as well as the banking sector. So, do you really think that the SMEs can be recovered by suspending the PARATE rights? Not what are the real issues faced by the SMEs and how these can be rectified?
Yeah, can you hear me, Tishan?
Yeah, you're audible, Sujiva. Please proceed.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you to ICC for having me. So, Tishan, a couple of points to start off with. I think the numbers clearly say that we just cannot ignore the SMEs. So it was said that, a million SMEs, I don't know the accuracy of this, but it was said million SMEs, 48% employment, 52% of the GDP, right? So it's simply, in every country, SMEs play such an important role. So it's no different in Sri Lanka. So we just cannot ignore them. So first point. See, there is a fundamental question. I think we're all running around the bush. We haven't answered, in my view, the most important question. The question is, the SMEs are suffering. Not only the SMEs, the mid-size as well as some of the larger companies are also suffering. Why? Because of the current economic situation coupled with the Easter bombings and the COVID situation, right? So because of that, and also as a response to our bankruptcy situation, the interest rates went up. So every business, I don't think we should just talk, even though this particular webinar is on SMEs, but every business is suffering. Now, who should pay the price, Tishan? See, there is no free lunch in this, no. What are they asking? What are the businesses asking? Businesses are asking three things. Either fully or write off our debt. Why? Our businesses have collapsed, or it has got downsized, or margins have collapsed, whatever the reason. Number one, they want a full or partial write-off. Number two, they want a longer term to pay, longer tenure, or they want a reduction in interest rates. Now, Tishan, there is a cost to this, no? There is a cost to this, right? Who is going? The simple question is this. I don't think anyone has answered that question. Who is going to bear this loss? Who is going to bear this cost? Because there is nothing called a free lunch. Either we must hold the politicians who are responsible for the current crisis, not just the previous Gotabaya Rajapaksa government, but many governments before that. Number one. If not, the government must bear this pain. Who is the government? Government is a taxpayer. That means you and I. We have to pay a little bit more taxes and give some concessions to the industries. Simple. A simple calculation, Tishan. I mean, don't hold me on to this number. About a 1% increase in VAT gives you about 50 billion. So government can come back and say we want to support the industries who are suffering, and we are going to put it up from 80 to 20%. We are going to raise 100 billion a year for the next 5 years. We are going to raise 500 billion and let the people pay that. That means the government and the taxpayer is paying this. If not, the bank shareholders must put their hand up and say no problem at all. We are willing to bear that loss on behalf of the current situation. Or if not, the bank depositors must all get together, you and I including, and say we have no problem. We are willing to take that loss. So someone must take this loss too, unless otherwise there are enough bankers on this who are able to say, no, we can get you, a credit line at a much lower cost. We can get you a credit line at 3% or 5%. And we can give it to the SMEs at, say, at 1% margin. So if these doesn't work out, Tishan, you and I can have another webinar 1 year down the road. We'll be talking the same points. Right? Nothing will happen. So that is the bottom line on this. Who is going to bear this pain? Is it the politicians who are responsible, politicians and government officials who are responsible for it? Successive governments and very right? You and I as a taxpayer, that means the government is going to take a hit and say we will support this, right? The bank shareholders, bank depositors, or ADB, World Bank, or some multilateral agency comes and says, don't worry at all, we'll give you some low-cost funding. Let's give it at PLR -3. I mean, simple as that. We need to answer this question. If without having an answer, this question will not get solved because there's no free lunch. Someone has to bear this loss. Number one. Number two, I have a couple of other issues. I hope they said there are 1 million SMEs. I hope all, but I don't think we have 1 million tax files for all these SMEs, Tishan. So I hope in the first case, all these SMEs will also open tax files and become tax-paying citizens. And also we need to understand, in the banking sector, I'm talking to you, as a director who has served on banks for almost, 14, 15 years now. The banks also need to have specialists. I think this is the government, I think the governor also commented, and one of the panelists also said, is that they need to have specialist people to restructure SMEs. And I don't think all the banks, and at least at regional level, I don't expect them to be having them at all at each and every branch. I don't think they have the expertise even at regional level, who can look into SME, whether it's what Anura talked about, maybe a 10 to 15 bedroom small guest house. It can be a small tire shop, small apparel, a clothing business, a small restaurant, whatever the SME. I don't think they have the expertise to restructure these. Not all banks. I'm not saying that none of them have. Some of them do, but at least at regional level, this expertise needs to be there. So I think some program is required. I also agree with the previous panelists where I think we have been talking about a bad bank for a long period of time. We have not done it. I think there's loads of legal issues which is preventing us from doing that. But I think that should be one of our top priority things, together with some of the other legislation we are looking at. And also, I think Governor made a very good point. Is the banks need to identify, right, who are actually the SMEs who are actually trying to repay, and the others who are actually the willful defaulters. I think it's a very difficult task, identifying, segregating these two categories. I'll leave at that, Tishan. But the key is someone needs to put their hand up and say we are willing to bear this cost.
Thank you, Sujiva. In fact, I have designed 2 questions for each panelist, but what I did in between, I have combined the question so that most of you answered a second question also. It was basically on what alternatives that can be provided, and what sort of laws that you want to bring in to change the PARATE law. So in that context, other than what you already stated, if you want to share anything additional, I would like to give up to 1 minute for you to elaborate in point form. So anybody who wishes to elaborate on a point or two, please take 1 minute, and then after that I'll be handing over to Dinesh.
Yeah, I'll just go first, Tishan, quickly, half a minute. I think we need to revise our business restructuring laws. That includes insolvency laws as well. I hope this has been again on the drawing board for a long period of time. It has taken too long. Our Companies Act is 2007. We are now in 2024. 17 years have gone, and we have been talking about it since the Companies Act came. That needs to come in. The bad bank legislation has to come through as well. And I'm sure, and I agree with everyone in this panel, and we all know the PARATE laws. I think it has been exercised as the last resort. I don't think there's any bank who has actually gone and exercised PARATE laws. I also one other thing just to add before I sign off on Anura's thing. I think I've always said this: the hotel sector debt needs to be restructured. It's far too much. There's about 700 billion in my view is a number. 700 billion, right, is a number, and I don't think this debt is sustainable. This needs to be looked at, and I think all parties need to sit together. That includes the banks, the central bank, the Ministry of Finance, the hotel associations, and so on. And I think this needs to be addressed immediately. Thank you, Tishan.
Thank you, Sujit. Yeah.
Tishan, can I go in next if you don't mind?
Yeah, please. Yeah, please.
Tishan, I just want to say that as a lot of speakers have mentioned, although as bankers we think we have done well in terms of the business revival, I think there's a long way for us to do to improve, right? So I think that is something that we need to engage a lot more, probably with the SMEs as well as.
Dilshan, you are breaking. Dilshan, you are breaking. Your line is breaking, actually. Your line is breaking. Yeah, so until Dilshan again, comes on board, can I can give the opportunity to any other panelists.
Yeah, Tishan, this is Sujeeva. I think one thing, sometimes there's a misconception that, bankers are trying to, get into their assets, and that's totally wrong. That's totally misconception. Please understand that bankers take every effort. Even looking at from now Governor was talking about these rehabilitation units and things which we have established even at People's and probably other banks. And we do rescheduling, we do restructuring, we do rehabilitation, and also agree a realistic payment plan. I think we have gone through the entire gamut of these operations, but still sometimes we have seen, of course, with all due respect to SMEs, that we are also People's Bank was having a large amount of SME sector, the clients, customers, but sometimes, their cash flows are not realistic. Then as a result, again, going back and forth. So, but we need to understand it, even this SME sector are, the customers, they have to look at their own cash flows. They can't expect to drive their businesses on the same scale that they have been driving earlier, because end of the day, cash flow is number one, and your working capital cycle. Because sometimes they don't understand, but when of course, I have met so many hundreds and hundreds of customers last 4 years, but when we explain them, sometimes they don't understand, because they retain their, sometimes not maybe partly qualified accountants and other consultants, but the consultants also have to play a major role in advising them. Look here, you can't expect the same level, but please look at, you scale it down and then go for go and meet. Certain customers I have seen, Tishan, they don't want to face this situation. You have to face the reality. You meet banker and tell the banker, look here, this is what we have restructured, rehabilitated probably large amount of customers last at least 2 years. Now, governor's point is very valid, because I'm going to take up with my people also, because we need to establish, there are a few things, but every region, we need to have a revival unit. So that is important. And then you have to prioritize. So there are so many, I think, because of the time constraints, I don't want to go beyond. But one thing, we all bankers respect SME. There are no question about that, Tishan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adhikar, sir. Yes, I would like to give the opportunity to
I'm under the just to request two things.
Within
One thing
1
is
minute.
rescheduling of loans are really required. Understand that the industry is surviving, and survival is going to take little longer, not because of anything else. It is because first customer need to get confidence of to come to Sri Lanka, that the Sri Lanka is a trouble-free country. Still, there are certain doubts in the mind. So as a result, we can't raise the rates, etc. And with the current rates, it's impossible to survive because cost of production is also very, very high. And therefore, banks need to relook at accumulated interest and also whether they can, waive off part of it, or at least stretch the period for a particular period with some kind of moratorium for another 1 or 2 years until the industries survive. But its good part is, or most of these, I would say 99% of these borrowers are confident that they can pay their loans and they can contribute to the growth of Sri Lankan economy through tourism in a big way.
Thank you. Thank you, Amra. Yeah. Who likes to take up next?
Dinesh.
Tishan, Sashi here.
Yeah, Shafi.
Yeah, just a quick point. Anyway, why banks do not want to go for PARATE and give so many opportunities for customers is because even after PARATE, when you acquire a land, we don't know what to do with the land because there is a cost of holding the lands, and at the same time, we are not in the business of property business. So there is no fun for any banker to acquire assets and then whether you have to deal with it later on. The point here is identifying these unviable businesses. Now, there are a lot of instances that the entrepreneurs, because that they love the business that they have been in, when the business is unviable, they don't want to, accept it. And that's where the real question comes. It's not the banks don't support, but the moment the banks come and advise them, and when they see that the business is not unviable, that they are not willing to accept it. So they are, I think, as well as the bank, the borrower is also have to, educate themselves, because it's a way of bailing out them before the problem is prolonged. Thank you.
Dinesh, can I?
Yes. Please go ahead. Within 1 minute, if you can just shed light.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had a technical difficulty.
Yeah.
No, first of all, I must say thank you for inviting me. And we now, even the governor said, willful defaulters. Willful defaulter, there is an interpretation. It's a little bit long, but I will tell you, willful defaulter is a person who is having funds and he's siphoning funds, or he's not paying intentionally, or he's disposing his assets in order to defraud the lender. There is an interpretation of willful defaulter. But are these SMEs willful defaulters? Are they responsible for COVID-19, Easter attacks, tax hikes, interest hikes, then foreign exchange crisis, then fuel crisis, and political turmoils? Those people, the SMEs, are not privy to any of these things. That thought everything happened beyond their control, beyond their. Now the governor is pointing out anti-PARATE activities. Now, when we point out the moon, he is looking at the finger. Because willful defaulters are the big timers, not the small timers. These are the people who provides and the life via the society in general. They provide jobs, they provide they pay taxes, they pay interest, and they they are depositors, and at the same time they are borrowers. Without them, the entire banking system cannot survive. I'm in total agreement with Dr. Badavitana. That is what we should collectively do. And it must be noted that no one in this country asked for abolition of PARATE. What we said was suspension of PARATE, give us a grace period of 5 years, and let the government pay interest subsidy to the banks, rather than these ASWASUM and various other things they are implementing. Because of that, we say pay interest subsidy to the bank where the banks can survive. At the same time, provide working capital and the other capital requirements of the SMEs at a lower rate. Then they will, because they never asked to write off the loans. They never asked to write off the loans. They wanted a period to breathe, period to survive. That is what now this we know Dinesh, in this country, as regulator, central bank failed. As fiscal policy makers, parliament and the treasury, the finance ministry failed, and the administrative service also failed. Now, in that atmosphere, are we going to kill the SMEs? What we are asking is not to kill the SMEs, just let them survive. Look at them empathetically. Otherwise, this will be a huge crisis for the economic crisis for the entire country. That is the message that I want to give. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, the point taken, very well established. Within 1 minute, if you want to share your last final thoughts on the subject.
Yeah, Tishan, I like the question. I like the question that was asked, I think, by Mr. Mudalige. Who is responsible? This is a national crisis, right? The banks are responsible for giving bad lending and maybe not monitoring properly, and then not being able to revive or rehabilitate those loans, right? The customers, some are willful defaulters. Of course, they are at fault for gaming the system, right? Then the central bank is making regulations, but they don't have the implementation arm. Like even the Basel III rules actually came to Sri Lanka way too late, right? Way too late. So you got to have responsible finance, and that is a national problem. And the sooner, because time value of money is something that you can't compromise. You see, as we speak, value of money is either going up or down. And in Sri Lanka, usually it's going down, right? So there's a time value for money. So you can't take ages for constructing a national bad bank. Immediately, the government should construct a national bad bank. There are enough experts. It's not that Sri Lanka is not suffering because of lack of expertise in banking. There are so many experts, but they are not given an opportunity, or they are not in the right places to do their jobs. So the workout units or rehabilitation units that individual banks are doing, it's not enough. It's a national problem. It has to be tackled national, and it has to be tackled now. It's time for action. We should have been proactive because we've learned lessons from history. But Sri Lanka never learned any lessons from history. We learned nothing from all the financial crises, and we wait for it to happen, and we say, okay, now it's happened, and let's, we are all in it together, and let's all suffer. That's not the solution. There is a solution to it. So I think the sooner you change the regulations or make the regulation enabling regulations to make a national bad bank, I think this solution can be achieved.
Thank you very much, Dr. Badavitana. Any other comment within 1 minute?
Mr. Jishan, shall I
sure.
something? Actually, in Governor's keynote address, he mentioned that in 2023, only 557 cases were acquired under PARATE law, but we have government gazette notifications like last 13 months. That means from January 2023 till 2024 January, 1,410 PARATE executed, already gazetted. So it's a big difference. I mean, already 3 times more than what governor said. So this is the actual thing what we got from government gazette notification, right? That's the one thing. And as Mr. Mayura said, actually we are expecting to suspend this PARATE law for a period and then give the breathing space to SMEs to come up the situation. As you know, the country is also trying to come up with this bankruptcy. So we are also the same. You know, the governor and the government from 2022 March till now discussing, going Paris Club everywhere and going and discussing how to restructure the government debts, right? So why that option you are not giving the banks and the central bank? Why that option not given to SMEs? Why we are not giving? Why the hell? Why cannot we get this option? We are serving the country for last 76 years. So this is so we are not responsible for this. Actually, for last 4 years, things SMEs we are not even a single rupee responsible. So we should need time. We should have a breathing space to come up as same as country. So give us this time. Otherwise, SMEs all will collapse. You know, the nearly 10 million people, for 4.5 million workers, everybody will in a very critical situation.
Yeah.
Also, you know, like last year, but actually in 2019, we got loans around 7 and 8% or 9%. Under one digit. Now, last year we paid 30 up to 36%. So we are responsible for that. How we can earn if we got loan around 7-8%, we have to pay 36%. How we can do this? Are we need to do some sort of a drug business or the SME business? This is a very sad situation. So everybody must understand the situation and then need to give proper solution. Actually, I really appreciate that Dr. Anil and Mr. Sujiva gave some sort of a very good suggestions how they survive the SMEs and how how they can help to recover this situation.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mahendra. I think you established your point. Yeah, anybody else within 1 minute in the interest of time, please? I think the time is also up. I want to hand over to Dinesh.
Just another one point. I think Mr. Doctor gave a very valid point about this bad bank. Apart from bad banks, Sri Lanka unfortunately lost 2 development banks. We have been having development bank where we have helping SMEs mainly, and they were hand holding and many more things. But unfortunately, both have become now commercial banks. I think we must strongly suggest that we must have a development bank as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I would like to hand over the proceedings to Dinesh. Dinesh, yeah, over to you.
Yeah, okay. Dinesh is all poised and ready. So without any further ado, we'll hand over the proceedings. Dinesh.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Arun. Good evening, everyone. This Sujiva, are you online? Sujiva Mudulige. Sujiva?
I'm online. I'm online.
Sujiva, this I'll start with you. I have a whole lot of questions here, but I'll start with you. You said that somebody must take bear the loss.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
That loss.
No. Am I audible?
Yes, Sujiva. Am I audible? Yeah, you're audible. Yes.
Okay. Right. Thanks. No, Dinesh, the problem is this. See, everyone knows the problem. The problem is SMEs plus some of the media, especially the SMEs and also some mid-size and some of the larger groups have suffered because of this high interest rate, especially over the last 2 years, Dinesh. I mean, when your interest rate is 30%, simply because it comes down to 12%, after 1 year, that doesn't mean the businesses can recover within a year. In my view, it will take a good 2 to 3 years for the businesses to recover. Right? It just doesn't happen that way. I mean, I have seen that. My take is another good 2 to 3 years. So what are the industrialists asking? What they are asking for is either suspension of interest. a longer period for them to repay. If possible, some write-off. So there's a cost involved in all this. So first thing is we need to calculate and say at least on an approximate basis, this is the amount we are looking at. Then either we need to approach one of the multilateral agencies, or if not, I think the government needs. Government has brought in special taxes, as you know, Dinesh, over the years, including the social security levy. We had we've had all kinds of taxes in the past. Bring in. I said I gave a simple example. Add a 1 or 2% to VAT and say, VAT roughly collects 50 to 60 billion, 1%. Collect it and say this is for industrial revival for a period of time, because somebody has to fund it. Someone needs to come back and say who is going to fund this amount, but we don't know the amount, Dinesh. So that's the biggest issue we have.
Yeah. Thank you, Sujit. Mahendra.
Yeah, Mr. Dinesh, yes.
Mahendra, can you hear us?
Yes,
okay.
Can.
This Mahendra, now is government talk about anti-PARATE business group, right?
So I didn't get you. Please, I didn't get you. Mr. Dinesh, yes.
And good business.
Anti-PARATE
right?
group and
why did he make that differentiation?
Yeah. Actually, differentiation means actually in anti-PARATE group is formed who are facing these PARATE issues. As the governor tried to separate it, but it's almost the same. All are the victim, PARATE victims are in anti-PARATE group. So so he tried to separate SMEs and the anti-PARATE, but all SMEs are in anti-PARATE activities. That's the real situation.
Yeah. Mahendra, in the interest of time, just tell me now. We bashed the banks a bit, we bashed the government a bit. What is the solution to this?
Yeah, solution actually.
Why don't you give me 1, 2, 3? These are the three solutions.
Of course, yes. Actually,
to this crisis.
Yeah, actually, we have many solutions, and we have given to the government, the central bank, and the finance ministry, and all. But if we say at a glance, for this PARATE, we need to suspend for a while, right, to recover. And why banks and the central bank going for the last option if there are many options to do in this bankruptcy situation? That's why we are asking. So why they are not restructuring our loans, SME loans? Why they are not restructuring? Why they are going for PARATE instead of restructuring? Why they are not reducing interest rates? As you know, as I said earlier, now in 2019 we got loans around 7, 8, 9, 1 digit. Now last year it gone up to 36%. You see the difference. So if we are doing a bankrupt country of business, and if we can earn 36% profit, the bank interest, where is the profit? Again you go to the present situation. Again you go to the present situation. Now present situation is, sorry? Sorry, I didn't get you.
No, I'll just leave you there, and then there are these bankers in the panel.
Yes.
Can I shift what's the solution to this?
Yeah, that's why.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah, we asked actually. First of all, we asked, okay, restructure our loans in a lower rate, in a little bit more period, with a little bit more period. Then everything will be survive. We want to survive. That's why. So we ask, please give us the breathing space without killing. Without killing us,
Okay.
please give us the breathing space. That is our
Okay. So
our request.
I'll stop you there and maybe ask the banks what they have to say.
Yes, sure.
Maybe Shashi, you can start off.
Yes. Dinesh, banks never takes PARATE action as the first course of recovery. It is the last course of recovery. The first is we contact the customer and we understand when the facility falls into overdue that there is a cash flow problem. And then we ask them to come for the new cash flows according to their businesses. And then we give we do a restructuring. There is restructuring, reschedulement. In that exercise, we also give interest concessions and capital moratoriums, both capital and interest moratoriums. There are various types of restructuring that we do. And for especially the hotel sector, even when after a moratorium, we look at their cash flow and the repayment, we staggered in a way that even initially it will be a small quantum and ballooning up to a higher levels later on. And some loans we have extended going more than even 10 to 15 years, where we don't know where the economy is going to go, but then still looking at the repayment pattern that is given by the customer. So usually restructuring or rescheduling happen according to the agreement that the client and the bank and the customer agree to. So if that also doesn't work, only that the PARATE action is taken. Now, I must mention, even though a lot of things said about SMEs and we need to support SME is the strength of the economy, and we also depend on SMEs a lot. But the fact is, there are customers who don't even respond to banks when the banks talk to them, when the bank invite them to come for a discussion, and at the same time, when we sometimes they wait till we pass the resolution and publish in the newspapers. I'm not saying all, there are very few act like that also. So at that moment, even when they come after we publish the resolution, we still give them an opportunity to make even a small deposit. And at that point also we restructure. And after about 2 installments, then again they abandon, they are not contactable even. Then again the banks go through the same process to pass board resolutions and go into PARATE. As I said repeatedly, banks do not want to take PARATE action because when today selling a property is also equally difficult, even it devolves on us. This holding on to acquired properties is also a problem for banks. So therefore, we always want the customer to have the possession of the property but to revive the business. So these interest concessions, lot of things that the bank should look at, which we are doing to a great extent, I would say.
Okay, so Shashi, I'll park this there. There's a question here from on SMS. Somebody is saying banks don't go after the big fish, but go only after the SMEs, and they lend with no security to the big businesses. What is your response to that?
Whether a big borrower or a small borrower, every cent that we lend, we have to recover because we are custody, we are trustees of the depositors, and the banks do understand their responsibility, and then we try to recover every cent that we lend. There is a misnomer, there is a myth, because there is a talk to say that there are companies, too big to fail companies, that we don't want to shake the boat, but it is not so. All the big lending also, banks equally make an effort to do the recoveries.
So Shashi, there are examples here which I don't want to go into. Maybe we'll ask Sujiva to respond. Sujiva Rajapaksa.
Dinesh, I fully concur, what Shashi said. End of the day, there had been cases. Now, if you take my bank, okay, now some of the loans coming from about 20, 30 years. Those are not given recently, but those are things. But end of the day, it's very strange for me to listen because when you say that bankers don't consider moratorium and extension of time and all that, in my case, I know my people are really, I mean, they accommodate these SME sector people. I never knew that there's a burning issue, but I know I have seen this PARATE, anti-PARATE thing. But anyone who comes to us, I'm sure, you know, my uncle, like maybe probably other bankers as well, and they consider. There are no question about that, right? But provided that you come out with a credible plan, which is very important. And coming back to about big fish and small fish, I fully agree with Shashi because we consider everyone as equal. End of the day, big people, you know, they always go for big tickets, whereas small people, they go for small tickets. So that's how we look at it. End of the day, we have to look after the deposit interest as well while we are looking after, you know, the borrowers.
Okay, thank you, Sujiva. This Dilshan, are you online? Dilshan?
Dinesh, I think his line got disconnected while he was speaking.
Okay.
Sometime.
Okay. So Anur, I'll move on to you. As you know, prior to COVID, the tourism sector debt outstanding was about 300 billion. Now it's gone up to 700 billion. Yes. And you guys are complaining that 400 billion that increases due to penalties and high interest rates, right? And that you want that restructured. So what is your solution to that 400 billion?
Actually, Dinesh, you are exactly right. Now, you can see, I mean, it's very nice to hear all the banks are doing exactly good, right things. But unfortunately, we, after going and investing money and to help the economy, and we are troubling the banks and we are creating issues for them. It is not us. It is the situation in the country that led us to all this situation. Otherwise, no one is going to go and borrow money thinking that, you know, we will not be able to pay it back. Here, interest rates went up, and there must be some kind of a concrete decision taken to about the accumulated interest. And all, that is how this whole interest have gone up almost double. This is our problem. If I have borrowed $2 million after paying 1 million, again I am back to $2 million because of this accumulation of interest on interest, all kinds of things. So it is, I mean, like if you look at some of the other countries in the region, they have done that. They have rescheduled loans for longer periods, and also they have cut certain amount of accumulated interest. These need to be done because everybody is very keen to pay the loans back. I mean, particularly, I don't know, I have spoken to most of the hoteliers. All of them are currently, also they are paying some small amounts. But the viability question, how can a business can become viable when the interest rate goes up from about 4%? We were getting US dollar loans from about, LIBOR was hardly anything. Now it has gone up. Dollar that we borrowed at 106.35 rupees has gone up to 320 rupees today. And also central bank earlier allowed people to pay us in dollars, so we could pay back to the banks in dollars. Now today we have to convert rupees back to dollars and pay to the banks. So these are, if you are going to sustain this great industry, which we are all committed for it. Now I'm also in the hotel industry for 45 years. I think I have all this meals.
Anur, I'll stop you there in the interest of time. Nalin, what's the solution? You must be managing a huge portfolio.
Thank you, Mr. Rakodi. Only thing I have to say, this for us, this PARATE action, we don't see it as a very effective thing. First thing, we always try to negotiate and get whatever the possible and give whatever the concessions for longer period, lower rates and everything. Why I said PARATE is not effective, one thing what we have experienced, most of the customers, they go to courts and
so are you saying that we should defer it, or?
No. That's the thing. No, there are for certain customers we need to go for PARATE, but still we need to change certain things because, say, suppose we go and acquire a property, and still if we can't get the vacant position, again we have to go to courts and file action. It can drag on to 2 to 3 years or more than that. Those things need to be looked into.
Yeah, okay. So Nalin, there's another question here. The question says that banks are making a killing by not valuing properties properly and then auctioning them at all values.
No,
What is your response?
that is not the case. We always, when we fix the auction, we get a valuation and go for the auction. That is a
yeah.
I
So
don't
this
know.
is the perception this is the perception. I think you need to do a bit of PR around it.
Yeah, at least I'm sure even other banks, at commercial banks, it's a rule that we get a latest valuation.
Okay, Shashi, you like to comment?
Yes, you have to get a valuation, and if you are unable to sell to the valuation, the current valuation, you need to go to central bank and get a special approval. If you are to sell below the valuation, because if your offers come less than the professional valuation that you have
No,
taken.
no. The issue here, Shashi, the issue here is that what this person is saying is that banks are not revaluing before the auction.
We revalue we go by the current value, the market value.
Okay.
There is a
So I
valuation
think
that
a
you
bit of
need to
PR is
obtain.
required there, I think. No, I think a bit of PR will be required from the banks just to educate the borrower. Because there's a misconception here. Yeah. Mayur, I saw you smiling. Any comment from you?
Because there is, when it comes to PARATE, that is the default or whatever takes place in a distant area, right? The board of directors is a mere conduit, right? They pass the resolution, right? They are in between. There are instances where purposely some businesses, the managers and other employees of the banks have done, right? I don't want to argue with that, but there is a draconian part inside this PARATE business, right? That has to be dealt with. That has to be dealt with the legislation, right? That is why Mr. Vijayadasa Rajapaksa at BMICH, he said that this law need to be reconsidered, right? In India, governor said about India, there is a tribunal, debt recovery tribunal. It is above 25 lakhs. All must come within the jurisdiction of debt recovery tribunal. From the inception, from the time of default, they go up to auction, right? And upset values and everything is done by the tribunal. So that type of solution is required, because you can't blame the directors. The directors of the bank can't go into each and every case, right? Thousands of loans given right now. Because of that, they don't have the time and this thing to go into. So there are things take place. I don't want to argue on that because it will take time, but that has to be addressed. That is why we say there is some people can, practically this thing can be
so Mayur, I'll stop you there because
Mayur,
I'll stop you there because I have just 10 minutes left. Anil, you spoke about the bad bank. Anil, are you still online?
Yeah, I'm here.
So Anil, you spoke about the bad bank. I know you were instrumental in setting up HDFC, right? Now, for the last 12 months, we have been talking about a bad bank, but we have really not got it going. One issue is the capital, right? So can you give us some solutions or some suggestions?
Yes, I mean, capital basically has to come from the shareholders who will be the other banks that have, actually created this situation in the first place, and also the government, because as Mr. Mudalige said, they are the stakeholders of this economy. The central bank, the
you
nation.
and I will have to pay for it
eventually, but it has to be a profitable venture. If you look at the way India is restructuring, I mean, we managed to restructure, the public debt, right, using EPF and ETF, right, in a way that affected the whole nation. So it's a national problem. I mean, telling banks to do a piecemeal rehabilitation is not going to work. If you're going to give regulations from the central bank, right, the bad bank would be the best place to implement them, because the whole problem is implementation. There'll be experts who will consult each and every, now like what Anwar said, they are not responsible for setting interest rates. The central bank is. So whatever anomalies that have been there, that can be addressed as a national problem, national crisis. And nobody is saying that the bad bank should take a hit. It should be a loss. It shouldn't be a loss-making venture. It should be a profitable venture. So I think the sooner we do it, because as we speak, time value of money is the longer you delay, the bigger it's gonna get. I mean, the debt mountain that we had two years ago has become more because interest is accumulating, and upon that, another interest is coming on, right? So you really have to make a move on, get the national, whatever you call it, asset rehabilitation or bad bank. I prefer the word national bad bank, because then the SME sector or the big guns as well, they know that their loans have gone bad. But there is no PARATE to, for SME especially, you lose your right to your own home, right? Or you lose the right of the third party who has pledged their mortgage, pledged their home on a mortgage. You don't do that, through a consultation process, but nationally, because giving it a piecemeal solution for a national problem, because the banks did not create interest rates, right? It happened through the central bank mechanism. So I think that's the only way to do it. You have to restructure, definitely. You have to restructure in whatever way possible to give a relief to the genuine, because I think the willful defaulters that the governor was talking about is a very small, minority. I mean, I don't think you should set rules thinking of that. I think majority of the SMEs are genuine. They want to keep their businesses going, right? They need breathing space, right? Those who have breathed their last fine, make them bankrupt.
So Anil, what about Anil? This Mayura talked about a tribunal. What are your thoughts around that? Is
that's fine? That's fine. Yeah, it is a solution as long as you do it on a national basis. You can't, India is doing it on a national basis, because the power to do that has to come nationally. You can't give the banks a regulation like the government said, okay, we've given bank to have workout units or rehabilitation units, and told them, consult your SMEs and restructure. That's fine. But if you do it nationally, only this can be solved. So there has to be a national bad bank established as a.
Okay, thank you, Anil. This Sujiva, you are sitting on the old national bank, now it's the commercial bank. Where will a national bank fit into all this? A national development bank.
Sorry, I didn't get you.
No. I said you are sitting on an old development bank. It's now become a commercial bank.
Both these development. Correct. No, I mean, see the two old development banks are no different to any other commercial bank today. Most of them have moved away from their development banking sort of. I mean, they are not wearing that hat to the same extent that they wore it, a few years ago. So I mean, see the key is two things. Dinesh, you raised one. One is the capital. I believe the minimum amount. I mean, we did some back of the envelope calculation. We need about $1 billion to start off with, and most likely it will have to come. The bulk of it may have to come from a multilateral agency, and with some of the banks contributing something as well. And the other thing is the legislation. See, without getting the legislation on board, there's no way that we can have this bad bank moving. So that is one quick point. And the second one is that I think at a national level, we need to just quantify and see when we had this problem. One of the hotels are involved trying to sort out this issue. What are we talking about? Is it $1 billion, $2 billion, $5 billion? And then to look at what type of response is required. So at the moment we don't have these numbers, so that's a major issue.
Okay. Also, Sujiva, both Sujivas can respond to this. There's a question here about the accounting rules, which is also preventing from loans getting restructured.
Right. In fact, I want to touch on this. See, the SMEs also need to move on, Dinesh, from having two sets of books. I mean, I feel embarrassed. When I sit on a bank board to see, they have the audited accounts and they have a different set of accounts when it comes to lending. I think that there should be a rule to say that none of the banks will lend on their second set of accounts. It should be done only on audited accounts, which goes to the tax office. I mean, this is crazy. Every bank is doing this. And I don't know whether it needs to be done through regulation or it should be just the boards must take a stand and say, we are not going to lend to SMEs who are coming with a second set of books. It's crazy. And it's embarrassing for me, where I have sort of sat on the other side of the fence, where you sign off on accounts, and then to see this being a common occurrence, especially among SMEs.
Okay, thank you. Sujiva Rajapaksa, are you still around or?
Dinesh, he had to attend another function, so
okay. Okay. So, Sujiva, Sujiva Mudalage, one more question before you sign off. Sujiva, what about the provisioning rules, which are actually preventing loans getting restructured?
No, see what we are doing right now is what is been done globally, and I mean I think even the recent, Dinesh, as you know, the ADB funded asset quality review among most of the banks, and one common theme I guess that came out was the staging process. The robustness of the staging process. I'm sure some of the bankers here may be able to comment on it as well. I think we need to tighten that as well. We need to make sure, we need to play by the rule book and then see, we need to understand the exact extent of the problem, because if you keep bending the rules, you are simply postponing the problem. You just can't do this. Play by the rule book and then understand the extent of the problem, and then let's, as a collective effort, let's look at a national solution.
Okay. To close this session, I have a final question to the entire panel. In principle, I think everybody agrees that the SMEs need to be supported, right? But what is the best way forward where we can protect both the SMEs as well as the banks? Maybe I can start with Shashi. What is the compromise?
Removing the PARATE rights, I don't think is a way to go, because banks, even though so many things are said, are responsible in taking action for recovery. And I believe it's in the best interest of SMEs to have it there, because what happens is if the banks tighten its credit underwriting rules and bring in a cost to that, going forward, the SMEs will find it difficult to access funds for their businesses.
Okay, thank you. Mayur?
Yes. Yeah, Dinesh.
Yeah, so no, my question was very simple. We all agree that SMEs must be protected, and we need to support them to get out of the crisis. Then the banks also need to be protected on the other side of the coin. So what's the compromise?
That is a situation where coexistence must be considered by both sides, and especially the central bank and the government. That is why interest subsidy must be given to survive we know that financial system, banks must be there for the people to develop the economy. On the other hand, SMEs must be there for the bank to nourish, right? So the both parties must get together and have a win-win situation in this crisis. As correctly Dr. Badavitana said, it has to be a national issue. It has to be considered as a national issue. We know in Thailand, even the people they came out with their gold jewelry to the government when they faced the crisis. So likewise, we have to make it a national crisis and national solution and a national issue of coexistence. That is where the solution lies. Otherwise, I don't think the taking, though the central bank says they are protecting depositors, what happened was 30 odd finance companies collapsed. All the depositors are on the road, and they have not done their duty, their supervisory duty. That is why we have to rethink, because even the regulator must be come out of the central bank. Regulator must be independent. Now in this situation like TRC.
Thank you. Nali?
We continue to lend into SME sectors, but what we are seeing for commercial bank sides, the published figures from Ministry of Finance, 2022 alone, we have given about 200 billion to SME sectors. But again, this rehabilitation unit, that is also my view, we need to expand it further. We need to have more industry experts or somebody to advise, and regional level also we need to expand that part. But having said that, we need to have this some sort of PARATE action for address these willful type defaulters. We have seen willful type of defaulters.
Okay, thank you. Nali, sorry, Mahendra.
Yeah, Mr. Dinesh, actually, we need to tell another thing. Like here, we discussed and we heard that if once property is acquiring, they're acquiring to the value, the market value. So what we are suggesting, if you are getting this up to market value, then the surplus balance should be refunded to the owner. I mean, if you like example, like
So that's
20
the normal
million
principle.
property, yeah, normal principle, but it won't it won't happen. That's the thing. It won't happen. So we must look into that. And as Mr. Mayura said, as Doctor said, and Mr. Mudalige said, actually this is a national crisis. You know, everybody knows this is a national crisis. So we have to be in a one table and get to a very supportive decisions, which SMEs are more comfortable in coming years. So otherwise, all SMEs are, and the remaining also will collapse definitely, right? Even if they get the mortgage, as Ms. Sashi said, if the banks acquire all the properties in Sri Lanka, what they are going to do with the properties without any entrepreneurs? What they are going to do with the properties? Nothing else. So that's why we are asking, okay, we give some breathing space. Why if we are in a bankrupt country, why we are not getting this benefit? We didn't bankrupt the country. We support the last 76 years, other than last 3 years maybe. So give us that chance. So we will contribute. We are the people who can come out this situation. We are the people who can do everything to the country. So give us the chance. That's our appeal.
Okay.
Understand?
Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mahendra. I understand your pain. This Anura, you're muted.
We have to look at simply rescheduling the loans for a longer period, give a short-term grace period on interest, reduce the accumulated interest rates. So if you do that, banks will certainly get, all these people will start paying back. Industry will survive. And as I said before, for 4 years, having kept those hotels closed, we need certain money to be infused for the hotels to be refurbished, etc. So banks also will get the benefit by getting a better position for the hotel, will be able to get a better return, and the banks will get their loans back. No hotelier is waiting to sort of wait without paying. It is simply not possible. The amount that they are requesting at this beginning of the industry is yet reviving. In this time, also we have to give some breathing space. That's all we are asking.
Thank you, Andra. And Anil?
Yeah, Dinesh. We need to generate a feel-good factor in the market because, as you know,
what is your helicopter solution?
A helicopter solution is the nation to come out and say, we have a solution. All the banks that have, debts that they cannot, like what was said, it's not PARATE execution does not mean I've done this. It does not mean that you recover your loan, right? What happens is by the time you go to PARATE execution with the time value, all those things, right? You don't get the realistic value that will basically offset the loan. So the banks will take a hit. But what can happen is you write down according to the provisions and then park it in a bad bank. You are shareholders of that bank to the extent that you created a bad debt. You're paying for that, right? And the bank's getting the money back, right? So So their bank balance sheet is clean, right? Cleaned up from bad debts. So they look good. So that gives a feel good factor. And then they can give access to finance to, more with more prudent due diligence to SMEs. So the thing is, we are being so negative in everything because basically the nation does not rise to the occasion. And it's a job of the central bank and the government to do that. So once they know that, they are there for us, right? Obviously, the whole thing's gonna change. So you have to give a feel-good factor to the markets that the SMEs are basically engines of growth for this country, right? SMEs have to be sustained and they have to be developed because we're not just talking about the SMEs that are there. What about the startups, right? What about the young people who are coming out of universities with innovation now? They all want to go abroad. Is that the solution that we're giving? Because there is is no feel-good factor in the country. So it's up to the government to create that. It's a national problem. It has to be looked at nationally, not piecemeal. Give the banks the regulations, you do this, that, and that. No, the government has to come. They are the final ombudsman. They are the final regulator. They have to do it. And thanks for having me. Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you, Anil, and I'll be in touch with you about the bad bank.
Sure. Thank you. We're always welcome.
So Sujiva, it must be pretty late in Australia. Must be midnight.
Yeah, almost.
So you can have the last word.
Yeah, so you can almost have the last midnight. Almost midnight. And thank you for having. So three quick points. So it has to be a national level solution, number one. Number two, Dinesh, all these industrialists are asking for breathing space. So we must value this breathing space. See, all this have a cost. We need to understand how much is this cost? Who is bearing it? That's number two. And number three, if you leave it to the government, Dinesh, this will not happen. So I think it needs to be led by the private sector. The Banks Association, the trade the SME trade chamber, they need to get together and maybe independent under the chairmanship of someone independent, maybe someone like you need to take this on. This is a real critical national issue, which has got postponed. We should have tackled this 2 years ago, right? As soon as we came out from COVID in 2022, we should have tackled it, and we haven't. If not, I can assure you, we can have another session 1 year down the road. We can talk about the same issues back again. So don't leave it to the government. Let's take it on and find a solution. It should be private sector led.
Thank you, Sujiva. Thank you very much to the panel. Over to you, Arun.
Thanks very much. So it was interesting to hear so many points of view. Well, I can't say too many points of view. There were obviously opposing points of view, and we recognize that something needs to be done. In the concluding remarks that we heard from Sujiva Mudalige, it says that you can't depend or rely entirely on the government to be able to provide the solutions. There are others that need to play a part or play a role, and consider this to be a national issue, and therefore it needs to move beyond that. One of the things that the webinar didn't really encounter or encompass, I should say, was the fact that there's also bad politics. There are economic issues, and there is obviously a situation that has cropped up, which has affected all of the SMEs, whatever the number they are. And there's also the bad politics and this feel-good factor, which Priyanka mentioned a moment ago. Yeah, that's absent quite a lot on account of the fact that there is kind of a disharmony or inability to get on with getting on. Well, there is no solution, but there's a lot of work to be done to be able to arrive at one, and that's where we conclude. Hopefully, there'll be more that we can talk about on another occasion, but for now, it's goodbye. And again, big thanks to all of the panelists. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, see you.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.